Hello everyone and welcome to our webinar today. We are delighted to see so many of you that have signed up for this webinar. We've got people who are coming from London, from Finland, from Canada, New Zealand. So welcome to you all. Please do say hello in the chat where you are. We love to see where you are joining us from. Apologies for my voice. I am a little bit croaky today, but fortunately it's not a lot of me speaking today because I'm going to be joined by two people who are going to show us all about the pedagogical impact of immersive experiences. But before I do, I'd like to introduce Ivan, who is our head of our support services. Hi, Ivan, how are you?
Hi, Louise. Like we talked about a minute ago, it's snowing in Helsinki, so for everyone in the chat, I hope your spring is going better than mine, but it's a lovely day other than that.
Oh, so you're keeping wrapped up warm there. We've got people from, saying it's actually sunny in St Andrews. It's actually sunny in Scotland, where I am as well. So for those of you who don't know Ivan, you probably have come across him before in emails or the support services, but Ivan heads up our support team. And Ivan's going to be in the chat today answering any questions you have about ThingLink, whether it's ThingLink accounts or any functionality. So if you see someone replying ThingLink in the chat, it's actually Ivan. Yes, and as Amanda has said, Ivan is indeed a superhero. I can actually vouch for that. So Ivan, I'll say goodbye for now and thank you for all your assistance. Thank you. So this webinar today is hotly anticipated. We are delighted that a report that was produced by Fiona and the team about the Leo Academy Trust and their approaches to digital learning and teaching. It was released earlier this year. It actually highlighted ThingLink in their report as one of their much loved tools. And when we saw this, and knowing Fiona and Cheryl already, we just wanted to put this webinar together so that you all had the opportunity to hear firsthand some of the thinking that went into this groundbreaking book, and also from Cheryl, who's been walking the talk there in Leo Academy Trust. So please do join me in welcoming Fiona and Cheryl. Hello, how are you both?
Hello, thank you for the warm welcome.
No. So it's not snowing, I don't think, in nearer London, and it's not snowing where you are, Cheryl, either.
No snow here.
Oh, but I'm delighted to see you both. We've got people joining us from Boston, Brazil, Memphis, the Alps. It's snowing there. But Fiona, before we dive into all of your work that's gone into the book, and Cheryl with the report, I'd love to hear a bit more about yourself, because you were actually nominated one of the top 50 influential educators recently.
Which is a bit of a hoot, because I can't influence my own children to put their shoes on when it's time to go out, really.
Oh, no, it's a wonderful thing. And, you know, I was lucky enough to know you before the book came out, and I've admired your approach. And there are very few people that truly get it when it comes to EdTech, and you both certainly do. But Fiona, tell us a bit more about yourself and your background and how you came to be involved and start the PedTech movement.
Sure. So originally, I'm a school teacher and school leader by trade, primary school, and my happy place is still on the floor of a Key Stage 1 classroom, working alongside children. But then, having been a school leader and worked in various national advisory roles, I'm now what we might call a portfolio worker, so an independent education research consultant. So I do a lot of work directly in and with schools, also with EdTech organisations, professional learning partners, publishers, and also with my academic hat on. I'm a postgraduate lecturer and research supervisor. So really interesting mix of things, and constantly learning. And that's the most important thing for us all, isn't it? And that's why these kinds of conversations, you know, working with colleagues like you, Louise, and with Cheryl, I learned so much, and it's an absolute privilege to be part of this group today.
Oh, thank you, Fiona. And Cheryl, I have to say that we had John Neal on from Quizzes, a few weeks ago. He did a webinar, and when I said that we were doing this webinar, he said that you were the unsung hero of digital learning and teaching. I think, yeah, absolutely, but we want to sing your praises here and shine a light on all of the work that you've been doing at Leo Academy. So a huge welcome to you. Tell us a bit more about yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the introduction there. That's amazing. Yeah, so hello everybody. I'm Cheryl. I'm the Director of Digital Learning at the Leo Academy Trust. I've been a primary school teacher for the last 13 years, and I've been at Leo for the last 6 or 7 years now. I forget how long it's been. It's been a long time. And we started running a one-to-one Chromebook program back in 2019, whilst I was still in the classroom. And you know, I was very much part of that early stage of utilising technology in the classroom. And obviously with COVID, that kind of really escalated our use of technology across the trust. And then, yeah, I've come to kind of grow into this role that is fairly new in the UK, where I sort of look at the strategic aims of the trust and utilise that across teaching and learning. So it's a bit of a strange role, and every day is different. And I think I've learned so much from the work that we've done with Fiona on how we think differently about digital. And yeah, and it's still, you know, we're still at very early stages, but really excited about the future of our children.
That's phenomenal. And we're going to be, over the course of this webinar, I'm going to take a back seat and hand the reins over to you, and we can hear all about the book. And it's going to be really interactive as well, because you're going to ask people to reflect on their own pedagogical stances as well. So, you know, if everyone is starting to watch this, keep watching, because you're going to be asked to have a look at your own practice. And I think that that's something that we could all do and learn and reflect. And certainly in the book, you do ask people to do this, and that must be really interesting from the comments you get afterwards. I'm sure that it shines a light on for people who really maybe haven't thought about all of the influences on the way that technology is used in their schools, their districts, across their classrooms. So before we get stuck in, because I'm dying to get stuck in, we always like to just remind people, because I'm conscious that there are people who are joining us today who maybe haven't used ThingLink before, you maybe don't know about ThingLink. So just very quickly, and feel free to join in any comments, Fiona and Cheryl. So we came up with our kind of strapline, if you like, which is immersive learning made easy. And what's quite fascinating is that ThingLink is 13 years old now, and Ulla Maria Koivula, who is the CEO and founder of ThingLink, had this vision 13 years ago that you could make anything an interface for learning. And she believed that through that interaction, that we could have these kind of physical environments and digital environments that actually kind of give us this opportunity to interact. And it's that kind of multimodal experience where you can build layers of interactivity that makes ThingLink so unique. But when we talk about immersive learning, quite often, and it's quite a buzzword at the moment, and I think that's because people are able to use AI to create these kinds of 360 environments. They're able to use headsets with 360 environments. So immersive learning and the power of immersive learning is being discussed a lot at the moment. But we just wanted to kind of call this out and say it's not just about headsets. So there are lots of reasons why headsets aren't appropriate for some schools. They might be cost prohibitive. They might not be right for some learners. They might not just be, you know, able to be accessed for whatever reason. But for us, immersive learning is not just about the headsets. It's about creating those immersive experiences, and it's about the sharing of them as well. And that might be generated with AI. It might be using immersive experiences with images that you take yourself. But we wanted to make it easy for both teachers and learners to consume those kinds of experiences, but create those kinds of multimodal experiences. So that's a little bit about ThingLink. And in order to do that, we have a whole suite of tools now, which are available for schools and for colleges, and we're also used across employee development as well. But today, I thought just for a little bit of fun, today is World Haiku Day. Did you know that today is World Haiku Day? And do you know what a haiku is, everybody? There's already a few comments that are coming in as well. People are loving multimodal and loving, yes, audio listening is immersive as well. But haikus are just a really nice way. We thought it'd be a bit fun if we could have a go at creating a haiku. And Fiona and I were talking about this earlier on, and I believe that you did come up with a haiku yourselves as well.
Yes, although I'm going to confess, I borrowed the help and the expertise of my 12-year-old, and a bit of expertise coming in from Gemini as well. Shall I read you our PedTech themed?
I'll put it on the screen for everybody, and I see there's some coming through already on the chat, which is just lovely. Go for it.
Impactful learning. Digital tools ignite minds. Pedagogy shines.
I love that. That's just brilliant. And Amanda has just put one here as well. ThingLink crafts worlds. Immersive learning made real. Touch, explore, and engage.
Oh,
that's just brilliant. And there's another one that's here too. Tech and teaching blend, illuminating young minds, future pathways glow.
Amanda's on a roll here.
Yes, I was trying to think of one that I could do, and at that moment my dog had jumped on me, and she's particularly hairy, so I put one together, which I'll put in the chat, which I thought was quite funny. So I have a particularly hairy dog, and this is my one. So fur cascades like falls, in your eyes the world's delight, heart's warmth but boundless fluff. Anyway, that's all I've got. Anyway, I think that's enough of me and enough fun with haiku. So if you've got a haiku, do put it in the chat, as it is just a little bit of fun to help us. But I couldn't think of a better introduction to your session than that haiku. So Gemini or not, George is a genius. Okay, I'm going to take my slides off now, and I'm going to hand over to you, Fiona, and you're going to take us through from EdTech to PedTech. And Cheryl, you're going to be joining in with all of your walking the walk examples. So I just removed myself. Over to you guys.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Louise. You just make all of these things so much fun. A huge thank you to you. And what we're going to do is have a little look at this concept of from EdTech to PedTech and share with you some of the ideas and the thinking behind it. And then what does it actually look like in action, and what's the impact around it all? So Cheryl and I are going to do a bit of a double act here. And lots of the things we'll be referring to in the first part of this are from the book that Louise mentioned. And so I'm going to signpost you to the relevant parts. And later on, we're going to refer to an impact report. So we'll signpost you to relevant parts of that as well. So lots of ways of finding out more detail about this. But first, why is it we need to change the way we think around digital technology? And I just want to touch very briefly on a little bit of the research in this space. And there is billions and billions of words been spoken and written about EdTech. So this really is a quick visit. And I just want to draw out three key bits, really. First of all, this thing that you see in the UNESCO quote, that this sense of having a right to an education is also kind of now synonymously seen with the right to forms of meaningful connectivity. And often that's spoken about beyond school or in our wider worlds and social lives and accessing ideas, questions, answers on demand, all of those sorts of things. But this kind of on-demand learning mindset is kind of prevalent now society-wise. We're also seeing more and more and more teachers using different kinds of EdTech as part of daily practice. Now, whether that's part of the role of the teacher, teaching, planning, preparation, assessment, marking, resourcing, or whether that's in the classroom in the moment of teaching, or by the learners themselves, it's all in this mix that we're experiencing. And that's reflected in the kind of global EdTech spend. You can see some figures on screen about what that looked like just over the last year. And I know colleagues I've worked with from all around the world have joined us today. And I know this resonates with a lot of the sorts of things that you're seeing in various different countries and locations. But more time, more thinking, more expectations, more investing. What is the impact of all this? And a little later on, we're going to hand over to Cheryl, who'll take us through some of these things in more detail. But we're seeing really impactful uses of technology in all kinds of places. And it's really interesting to look at where that is. The graph you see on the screen here is one extracted from the PedTech impact report we'll talk more about later on. And I just want you to have a look at this thing that in this scenario, in the Leo Academy Trust, after the introduction of one-to-one devices, you can see by the orange bars that upward trend of attainment across reading, writing, maths, core subjects, in comparison to a broader landscape with a fairly stable, slightly downward decline. In other words, bucking the trend. And that's really significant to think about in terms of future planning. And in terms of effective use of digital technology, these are the kinds of headlines we're seeing at Leo Academy Trust and are being seen in schools more broadly as well. Things like that attainment gap growing by those who are using EdTech effectively, and additional progress, additional rates of progression happening. Reduction in the level of extra interventions needed in the classroom, because technology gives us the mechanisms by which to provide high quality in teaching and learning that's fully inclusive at the moment of teaching and learning itself. We're seeing workload reductions, we're seeing more engagement, more attendance, behaviour goes down because schools seen as working learning environments seen as really purposeful learning spaces. And of course, if workload's down, engagement's up, impact success criteria of one over another are up, satisfaction both for professionals and children increases. And what does that do? Creates a sticky environment that we all want to be part of. So in terms of net mobility, staff retention, and professional reward, professional satisfaction, these are all huge, huge markers of impact. But we do know, don't we, that around the world, whether a classroom is a 3-year-old, a 93-year-old, whatever the country location, we know there's huge amounts of variance in how tech is actually used. That gives us a bit of a social equity issue, doesn't it? Because if we think back to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, Goal 4, quality education, we are challenged, all of us, to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education for every single learner that we work with. And that's really interesting when you think about all of these successes, all of these turbocharging of learning experiences are happening in classrooms all around the world. The onus is on us to make sure our learners are not the ones that are missing out, that they too are included, are being made accessible, and are seeing the kind of learning gains others are seeing. Alongside that, we've got this strange kind of framing around digital technologies, around EdTech, that often it's seen as pivoting around tool-specific thinking. And historically, we've seen this kind of repetitive cycle, as Kazanathan says here in this lovely quote, that we go through, something new has come out, it's really exciting, there's all this hype and noise around it, and then lots of investment, not just financial, but time and energy and exploration and conversation. And then a kind of poor level of integration as people grapple with all of that white noise. And then a kind of slight disappointment when we see a bit of a lack in terms of impact on educational outcomes. And the cycle's just repeated because it's a new tool or a whizzy, shiny new thing each time. And as Louise said earlier, we're kind of seeing that a little bit with generative AI at the moment, although there are those that see it as a slightly different conversation. But the point here is all of us are being consistently provoked to do something with digital technology by different people in our classrooms, in our workplaces, society, media, law, culture, global events. All these little pokes and prods are affecting the way we think about digital technology. And these influences are pouring onto us from all kinds of different places. So I'm going to ask you now to think about what influences how you think about digital technology. So I'm going to introduce you to this model. It's called the funnels of influence. It's in the book. It's a whole chapter that unpacks the extensive literature review that's behind this. I'm going to give you a simplified version of this. The diagram you see on the right is the funnel of influences. I want you to see the funnel of influence in yellow. That's influences coming from the context that you work in. And the funnel of influence is the blue one from the self. That's you personally, you as a unique, individual, brilliant human being. And those influences are coming together and creating a situation that's specific to a moment in time. Now, let's look at those influences. The things coming from the context that you're in, these will be things like global events, national policies, economic changes afoot, budgets and localized policies, organizational process and routines, school-specific or workplace-specific cultures and norms and habits, all the things that for anyone in that context would be the same. But I hear you say, we all experience those things slightly differently. And that's where the funnel of influences from the self really comes into play. So these are the things that affect each of us as unique human beings. So when you're born, you enter into an environment where there are all kinds of different assumptions and expectations and norms. You know, what it means to be an adult and a child in the home you were born into. What it means to grow up and to go to school or to go to work. Was that valued or not valued? Did that mean going out or staying at home? All kinds of different thinking that starts to be surfaced. And then your own experiences of life thereafter are seen through that lens that you started to develop as a very, very small child. Now, your own education feeds into that. So, for example, if you think back to your own schooling experiences, and if I said to you, think of one teacher who you really remember, you'd either think of someone who had a profoundly brilliant influence on you, maybe inspired you, opened up doors for you, made things possible, or somebody maybe who had the opposite effect and who restricted you, limited you, maybe humiliated you. But there'll be somebody that you think back on and think, I remember them. And as a professional now, as an educator in the workplace or with children, adults, whomever it is, how you see the role of an educator will have started to be formed by the influences from that person, that teacher in your own childhood back then. Because you'll either replicate the things that you felt were great and impactful or beneficial, or you'll react against the things that you felt were really not so great. But either which way, as an educator, the influences affecting you today started way, 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 way back before you even thought about the landscape we're in now. So all of these influences affect us. And coming here today, we've accumulated our own education, our training, our career journeys so far, the people we've met, the experiences we've had. It all accumulates. And today we are a result of everything that we've lived through so far. That creates a very unique lens. And that lens interprets all of those influences from those yellow bubbles, from the context. And that's why each of us see any given moment slightly differently to the next person. And that results in this kind of situational knowledge, the stuff we're drawing on from our own minds in this given moment, situational expectations, what we expect of ourselves, what we expect of others, what we think others expect of us, and a situational identity, who we feel we are, how agentive we feel, how empowered we feel in a particular moment. And all of that stuff, that is what shapes what we think, what we say out loud to others, what we intend to do, what we actually do, and of course then what others experience. And each of those might be aligned in the same, but usually is a little bit different from each other. There is some variance in there. And all of that stuff, that's what starts shaping our pedagogy. And so that's where I want to take us next. I'm going to ask you to do some really deep thinking in a moment about your pedagogy. Because what do we actually mean by this word pedagogy? And I'm reasonably sure if I asked each of you just to jot some thoughts down in the comments panel, you'd each pick out slightly different ideas and things around pedagogy. Give it a go. While I'm talking, start jotting into that comments box sorts of things that come to mind when we use this word pedagogy. There's no right or wrong to this. These are all things that have come from the influences affecting us. Because when we think about pedagogy, it's an umbrella term, right? And people often use it to refer to pedagogical beliefs, the things we believe about pedagogy, pedagogical approaches, the methods, the recipes, the teaching and learning strategies we use, our pedagogical intentions, the things that we want to enable, our pedagogical practices, the actions that we carry out. When we use pedagogy, we may be also referring to theories, Vygotsky, Piaget, Skinner, Levin-Wenger, communities of practice, behaviorism, all of the socioculturalism, all these things. Politicized pedagogies that maybe come from government or mass media or from fashionable Twitterati. Implicit pedagogies that we might be doing without even realizing it. Or explicit pedagogy. We need to do thing X and this is how we're going to do it. We might be referring to organizational pedagogy that our workplace or organization have chosen to adopt, or individualized embedded pedagogies, things that are really important to us. So there's loads and loads and loads that we mean when we use this word pedagogy. And what that ends up translating into in practice is this kind of overgeneralized notion of what pedagogy actually means. And arguably, perhaps it's become the most misused word in education, because when we say the word pedagogy, which lots of us use day in, day out in different environments, we often referring to slightly different things. So here's some definitions. I want you to think of pedagogy as 4 distinct domains, because pedagogy technically means what it is to support learning. Now, that's not the same as how we learn or the science of learning. It's what it means to support learning. And people will often say to me, yeah, but Fiona, you mean teaching? Well, teaching is one particular theory about how learning is supported. So it's not right or wrong, but it's one theory. And there are other theories that would say learning can be supported without the role of a teacher and without processes of teaching. And we only need to think about our learning, our informal learning beyond school, away from the workplace, for example, to help us kind of see where that starts to come into play. So let's think about pedagogy as 4 distinct domains. Number 1, what do you think it should mean to be a learner? And what do you think it should mean to learn? What does that look like? What does that mean? Who's involved? Where do we do it? How do we do it? So domain 1, learners and learning. Domain 2, teachers and teaching. What should it really mean in 2024 to be a teacher? What is a teacher as a function, as a person? What is this thing, teaching? What happens? How does it happen? Why does it happen? Domain 3, around knowledge, curriculum and assessment. Like, where does knowledge even come from? How is it formed? How is it verified? Who decides on it? I use a funny example of years ago, people often thought that the world was flat, and that was seen as knowledge and as a fact. And in 2024, slightly fewer people think that the world is flat, and now it's thought of in a more spherical sense. And now that's seen as knowledge. So, you know, when did it change? Who decided on that change? How did that evolve? What, therefore, is knowledge? Where does it come from? How's it shaped? And the 4th domain around schooling and systems. How does going to school or going to workplace or going to professional training, how does that relate to our wider lives? What are the connections, the relationships? Who's involved? Who's not involved? And why? Now, these are some really, really big questions. So we're going to unpack those very, very briefly. But when you use the word pedagogy, I want you to think of all 4 of these things, because too often when we use the word pedagogy, we just end up referring to a subset. And usually it's actually just referring to teaching strategies, which is like one teeny weeny part of pedagogy. Supporting learning is so much more broad than that, isn't it? So, quick activity. We'll see how the time goes, whether we'll do all of this or just part of this. We're going to have a look at which theory of pedagogy your own beliefs align with traditional behaviourist beliefs, with individual constructivism, with social constructivism, or sociocultural theory. Sounds more complex than it is. Right, I'd like you to scan the QR code that you see on the screen now. You'll be taken to a Google form. On that form, you will have 1 question, 4 possible answers. There is not a right or wrong answer. These are 4 parallel belief systems, each of them equally valid, each of them equally right. One of them will feel right to you. And what I want you to do is choose the one that represents the best fit. It's not perfect, the best fit for how you think things should be. I'm going to give you 2 minutes tops. The link's in the chat box, or you can scan on the QR code. Once you've pressed submit on the form, you'll see a response confirmation, and that will tell you which descriptor aligns with which theory. And what I'd love for you to do is pop your response to that in the comments box. And I know some colleagues have engaged with this already through the book and through some other sessions. So I can see some of these starting to come in already, which is awesome. Amazing. I can see a flurry of responses coming in. Just give you another 30 seconds. Okay, I'm going to give you a 5-second warning. Then I'd love to play this back to you. I'm going to carry on in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. Thank you so much for doing that. And if you'd like to keep that QR code or link and do the activity with colleagues, or do it again when you've got more time to reflect later, you're really, really welcome to do that. And I'm just going to play back to you some of the results that have come through. It's anonymized. Just to say that around about half of the group on this call are aligning with social constructivism, and then the other half of the group are nearly evenly split across the other 3 theories, which is not at all unusual. Fantastic. Right, we're going to dip into another one. We're going to have a look this time at what you believe about the role of the teacher and the function of teaching. So again, if you could scan this QR code or click on the link that's in the chat box, same thing, 1 question, 4 responses, pick the best fit for how you think things should be, and then press submit, and then you'll be able to see which theory of pedagogy your views about teachers and teaching align with. And again, I'm going to give you just 3 minutes for this one.
I feel like you should have put some music on for this, Fiona.
Do you know, I was just thinking that, Cheryl. I'll have to ask you to sing, Cheryl.
Oh, I don't think anyone wants to hear that today.
That's my learning point for next time we do this. Such a good tip. Amazing. 2 more minutes. This is so interesting. So 1 more minute. And 30 seconds. And 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You're an amazing group. Thank you so much for doing that. And do you know what's really fascinating about the responses to this activities? Do you remember when we looked at learners and learning? I said about half the group aligned with social constructivism, and then the other half was split across the other 3 responses. And this particular activity with this particular group, not one person is aligned with social constructivism, and we've got a nearly even split across the other 3 theories. Really, really fascinating, isn't it? Now, I want to leave time for lots of questions and conversation, and most importantly, for Cheryl to share with you in just a moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skip over the next 2 stages of this activity, but I'm going to ask if we can pop those links in the chat box, and you'll have a copy of these slides as well. And then you can do the other 2 parts of this, looking at knowledge beliefs and looking at beliefs around the role of schooling in your own time when you've got a bit more time and space to reflect. So why does all this matter? Why does it matter which theory of pedagogy our beliefs align with? Well, it's because of this. Let's have a look at the different types of tools that we think about and use. And I'm going to use a little example about auto-marking quiz tools. And I want you to think about which parts of these tools we tend to focus on. So when we think about learner quiz tools, the focus that we often give is on the convenience of auto marking, the adaptive questions, the time savings, the individualized pathways, all of those sorts of things. Sometimes we then think about the teaching strategies, the pedagogical approaches underpinning those, like retrieval practice, spaced learning, adaptive teaching, so on. The bit we don't often think about is that all of that is underpinned by forms of individual constructivism. In other words, beliefs that learning is predefined, that it's sequential, that it's cumulative, and it takes place by the formation of individual mental models. Now, it's not a perfect example, but you'll start to get this sense of how we look at the surface, and we look at the what, and we start to think about the how, but we don't often think about the why. Now, there's another example of this that I really want us to think about, and that's this notion around collaboration. Because lots of people will talk about collaborative boards, putting ideas together, or collaborative tasks. And we talk about that very much in the activity, the task level. Again, we don't think quite so much often about some of the approaches that underpin the impactful uses or the successful uses of that. In other words, the role of talking, the think, pair, share type of oracy approaches, or having access to a bank of ideas. All of the ideas around collaboration, meaningful collaboration, are kind of built off the premise of a form of constructivism, often social constructivism. In other words, it's that interchange between people that adds value to the learning experience, whether that's through scaffolding, questioning, challenging, whatever it might be. But the role of talk and the type of talk really, really matters. So the belief system, the why, underpins the how and the what. We don't talk about it quite often enough. Now, as Professor John Hattie says, if as educators we can pick and choose tools that help them to be the educator we want to be, then the tool and the human being become more effective. And of course, that leads us to greater collective efficacy, which we know has an impact on attainment. And that's what this notion of pedagogical alignment is all about. If we can be really clear about our beliefs and our values, our pedagogical beliefs, then we can set out very clear, very precise, very informed pedagogical intentions. If we have clarity about our intentions, we can then pick and choose the most appropriate evidence-informed strategies to bring those to life. And if we have the right strategies with that alignment, our actions will be aligned with our beliefs. We won't be contradicting ourselves through the words we use or the prioritization we make in the moment of learning. And then we create complete alignment and consistency, clarity for the learners that we work with. And why are we all here? Is to support those learners, children or adults, wherever they may be. So this shift from EdTech to PedTech, the rationale behind the book that Louise so kindly shared at the start, is there used to be this kind of very EdTech, what and how centered mindset. We looked at what tools we might use, and we thought, okay, how can we use those tools in teaching and learning? How can we use them to support our educational vision? But it was all pivoting around the use of a tool. This evolution is moving towards that PedTech mindset. So PedTech is a mindset. It's not a thing. It's not tangible. It's not a technology. It's a mindset. And all it's doing is switching that around the other way and saying, let's think about the why first, and then the how and the what. What is our educational vision? And then which tools, digital or otherwise, can support that? It's a very subtle distinction. It's a very specific distinction, but it does make a massive difference on impact. And that's where we'd like to go next. So Cheryl and I have been working together for, I don't know, work sounds like the wrong word, Cheryl. Working alongside you is just so much fun. And we've been conducting this research, which was published in December, I think, wasn't it? Seems yesterday and a long time ago all at once. But what this did is it was a study that took place over a period of about 12 months. There were 17 of us on the research team. We used all kinds of methods to really dig into what's happening in the classroom at the point of teaching and learning, and where is the impact when we move from this EdTech to PedTech mindset. So I'm going to hand over to the brilliant Cheryl Shirley now, just to take us through some of the things that found. Cheryl.
Thank you, Fiona. So I think one of the sort of biggest things for us was we were really starting to think about how children, how we can make sure that our classrooms remain really inclusive, and how do we utilize technology to be able to support children that have a huge range of needs. And I think sort of maybe prior to this, it might be that, the teachers sort of in the classroom providing children with a load of resources that, they would hand out to the class. And, I think for some children, there's some real issues with that. They don't really like having things given to them and being told that they've got to use them, or this will help you, like this is the tool for you. And I think what we really wanted to do was really focus on how we can make sure we utilize technology to be able to provide children with that on-demand help and support that we know that will support them with their learning, and take away the stigma of these are the things that you need, and having the teachers make that choice for the children. We wanted children to be able to make those choices for themselves. So that's almost where ThingLink kind of comes in, really, where we wanted to create this culture of that autonomous access for children, and getting them to be selective over what exactly it is that they want to do. So, for example, making sure they've got instant access to things like word banks and vocabulary, and having success criteria there if they need it. And I think that's really, really important, having those, giving children choice on how they access things. So, for example, in the example you can see on the screen here, having that toolbox of information, but it not just being sheets, it could be a video to support them, because some children looking at a sheet isn't going to help them at that moment in time, but having a quick 2-minute video to support them would be the right choice for them. And I think that's really, really important. And also that children's learning shouldn't be limited by the capacity of the teacher. I think really important in the room, where, in a classroom, in a typical classroom, there's only one teacher, and there are, often in our classrooms, we have sort of 32 children. And how do we make sure that children are not reliant on that adult support all the time? I think that's so important. So I'm just going to move on to the next slide. Thank you, Fiona. And I think one of the things that we really wanted to focus on throughout the report whilst we were doing the research was around, we know that children are spending a lot of time at school each year, but what are they actually doing? And how does digital make that difference to them? And we found that, through the research, we did lots of classroom observations, and we looked at lots of different ways that we were utilising technology. But we found that digitising tasks is increasing efficiency within our classroom. And I think that could be something really simple from, you know, how long does it take children to find a word or locate a word in the dictionary versus how long does it take them to do that in the classroom, you know, with the device. And, you know, it allows children to be really focused on learning and what they actually need to do, and it being really on demand so that they're able to do that successfully. And I think one of the things that I found really interesting whilst sort of taking part in the research with Fiona was around how things completely change in terms of the nature of what's happening in the classroom. So things like the nature of talk, for example, that's been a really big one for me. And I think one of the lessons that I observed during the research was around kind of children ordering a story in writing, for example. And in the classroom that was utilising technology, the nature of talk was about the actual writing and the oracy and practicing the skills that they would need to be successful with the writing. Whereas in the class that wasn't utilising the technology, the nature of talk was around the task. I can't find my glue. Where's my pencil, and all those sorts of things. And actually, there wasn't enough time in that lesson to really focus on what the objective actually was. And it gave children more of an opportunity in the digital lesson to really focus on vocabulary and have those higher order thinking, which ultimately is leading to our greater depth outcomes, giving children that opportunity to really focus on what's important. This is just a quote from one of our children. So it says there, I can think more about what I'm supposed to be doing, and then my learning is better. So it takes away some of those challenges that some children face in the classroom. And so they're actually able to focus on that. And you can see that this is our impact. And I think Fiona showed the similar one earlier, but this one is our writing attainment. And I think often when we talk about digital, we talk about, we might be losing our writing access. And actually, we found the complete opposite. We found that by providing children with the use of technology, we're able to really focus on getting those greater outcomes through those things that I just discussed. On the screen here, you can see that we're just talking here about a little bit about how children can be more autonomous over what they do. They don't like being stood out as being different in the classroom. And by digitizing things and creating that culture where children can be selective over what they're doing, means that they are able to be selective over what they choose to use. And it doesn't look any different. You look at one child and they're utilizing their device in one way, and you look at another child and they're utilizing it in a totally different way. And I think that's really, really important. And I think in terms of cognitive overload, I think that's another thing that's really important to our children, is that often, the teachers' boards are overloaded with information, and things that we give children can often be full of lots and lots of information for them to be able to take in. It might also be simple things like them being able to quickly already practice something, and being able to listen back to it is so important, so that they remember, or they and I think that choice is really, really important, and you want to empower them to be independent, definitely. And they're not reliant on putting their hand up and focused on asking the adult all the time. They can be independent with what they're doing. And I wanted to show you today the simplistic side of ThingLink. I think is probably simplistic but powerful at the same time. But these are just a few examples that you'll see from what goes on in our schools, where providing children with very simple toolkits that support them. This is particularly for writing. There's our teachers, they're very creative. Some do it really simply. Some people put a bit more effort in and make it really jazzy for children to focus on. But you can see there that the point is that all of those resources are there in one place, so that children can be selective over what they do, that, like I said, in a way that works for them. It could be that there's a video to support them. It could be that there's just a quick reminder, so that when they're doing their writing, they can really focus on, okay, I know that we've been learning about conjunctions. I need a quick reminder about what that is, and then I can carry on and I can just get on with it. I haven't got to put my hand up and ask the teacher, what is a conjunction? I can't remember. And so everything is there all in one place for children to be able to access independently. And I think somebody mentioned in the chat, it's definitely that universal design for learning approach. We see those really clear examples of UDL in practice. Our teachers are finding that by digitizing, and we talk about waggles, what a good one looks like. So a teacher example that's given, it might be previously that they would have had to have sort of differentiated that lots of different ways for every child to be able to access. But again, by putting it online, we're able to chunk it. We're able to make really good use of immersive readers and things that children can make that them more independent with it and be able to access it. And this is a really nice example where you've got this, the one on the left might be the example we may have done previously, where we hand this to the children and we get them to read it and try and pull it apart, look at the features, etc. And again, for some children, that would be okay. But for lots of children, that would already be cognitive overload. And by maneuvering that into something like ThingLink, where there is really clear instructions on what to look at, where to look at, and then to have all of those accessibility features as well, just makes that so much more powerful and so much more accessible for every single child in the classroom. And then the other one that I always find a challenge with classes is the use of research. And I think that's something that children often find really difficult. And I think, again, giving children different ways to research is also a really powerful thing. So you can see here we've used Blockade Labs to sort of create an immersive kind of experience so they can look around and they can come up with questions that they may have. But you can see that they've also then thought about different ways. So again, like if they're learning about clothing, there might be a video about clothing, there might be a website about clothing, there might be an immersive kind of thing where you can a 3D model where they can look around at the clothing and make those decisions and come up with those decisions on, in that real way that's going to support everybody. I'll come back to you, Fiona.
Well, it's to kind of state the obvious, really, isn't it? I mean, the examples that Cheryl so brilliantly shared, which are like the tip of the iceberg of the scale and the embeddedness of the work across the Leo Academy Trust schools. But the essence of that is that the focus really is not just on the process of learning, but how can that learning process be most effectively supported? Coming back to that message around pedagogy, how do we believe learning should be supported? And this immersion through visual, through sound, through video, through experiences, through provocations that connect to talk and all these wonderful connections, that's where we see the impact. Impact on learning happens when we focus very explicitly and very precisely on learning. And in environments where we don't see an impact on learning, the research shows us time and time again, it's because the digital technology or the tools are used for the school's overarching organizational purposes or for the teacher's sort of administrative and preparation and functional purposes. Now, we will see an impact of those types of use. Of course we will. But the impact will be seen on workload efficiencies and financial savings and data's transfer and all of those kind of operational, organizational, employee type benefits. They're really, really important. But if we want to see a focus on learning, we must make sure our actions are focused explicitly on learning. And then just to conclude with this kind of thought provocation that we still often talk about the digital divide. And yes, it's a very, very real thing, isn't it? Division in terms of devices, in terms of connectivity, subscriptions, all these sorts of things, infrastructure things. But actually, in the world that we live in today, in 2024, with schools all around the world doing all kinds of different things, actually, the digital divide is perhaps being nudged, exacerbated by the choices that each of us do and don't make about what we open up at the point of learning, because we're all fundamentally pedagogical gatekeepers. The default can be to leave those gates closed. Maybe that's through fear or lack of training or knowledge or, whatever the reason might be. But what we want to do is just nudge those pedagogical gates open. And just to remember that not every decision in a school or around a workplace, not every decision is about teaching and learning, but every decision is fundamentally a pedagogical decision whoever it's made by, teacher, leader, policy, local, national, because it will ultimately affect the choices available to educators and learners at the point of learning, who they work with, how they work with them, and why they're working with them. We've got some actions for you to take away. Do go back and probe your pedagogy. You've got those other 2 activities. Probe, and keep thinking, keep reflecting on it, and do that with colleagues that you work with. Get those pedagogical conversations going on. Think about what you're focusing on, the beliefs, the approaches, the practice. What are we focusing on and why? And really think about bringing that pedagogical alignment into place. Louise, it's been so much fun. Over to you.
Can everybody join me in giving you a huge round of applause for all of the work that you've been doing, Fiona, all of the work that you've been doing, Cheryl. It's absolutely phenomenal. And, you know, in working in an EdTech company, I can truly say that this is just what we want to hear, because we know that we design these tools to be part of that process, to be part of that mindset, and to see this in action is just fantastic. So thank you so much for doing all of this. Lots of really amazing comments coming through, amazing webinar, lots and lots of congratulations. So thank you. We've got a few minutes left, and I just thought it'd be really fun. I just put my screen back on, is to say that we saw some of the wonderful examples that have been used in Leo, but we're also seeing, because of the ability to create those kinds of base media assets, if you like, these kinds of examples now, and I showed this one to you before, I think, as well, where we're seeing teachers creating these examples. And this is Romeo and Juliet's balcony scene. And the educator here has put in little snippets of examples of what that means. They've even gone as far as, you know, putting in a chatbot, which is going to answer you in the style of a thespian. And we just kind of take that pedagogical mindset, that PedTech mindset from the outset, and this is right for him and his learners that he's doing in that school at this moment in time. So some phenomenal examples that we're seeing that are being developed right at the moment. And I can also say, from behind the scenes as well, we are planning to make things even easier for people in the way that they use ThingLink. So, for example, in the future, you might be able to upload a PDF of how to do something like start your fire, and it might actually create a scenario-based learning experience so that you could try out different things in order to help you start that fire, rather than just having the image with the tags on. So we're looking at much more depth in the way that you can create those experiences as well. But before we go, just to say that there is a new module to our ThingLink Certified Creator course. We've added an extension module, which is all about using guided tours. So if you are already a ThingLink Certified Creator, you can go back in and you'll see this extension module, and we'll keep adding to these. There'll be one about AR, one about using admin tools, and an advanced scenario builder, as you've just heard me give you some sneaky peek news there as well. Our next webinar, which you'll be interested in, on the 8th of May, actually this is the next one after that, is going to be announcing our new ThingLink Certified Trainer Program. And on this webinar, myself and Michelle will be talking all about how you can become a ThingLink Certified Trainer. We're also going to have a webinar with Book Creator. Book Creator and ThingLink just play beautifully together. So we thought it'd be really fun to invite David Hotler, who is the community manager from Book Creator, and also some lovely examples from Denmark with Christopher, who's been sharing these on LinkedIn recently. And he's actually been using Book Creator and our AR app to create some immersive experiences. And another webinar, and this is slightly tweaked towards the healthcare industry, but I think there's something there for everybody, which is all about creating scenarios and scenario-based simulations. So that's coming up on the 1st of May. So I think that's all we've got time for. So I'm just going to remove my screen back there and just say there is some amazing comments that are just coming through, all of the wonderful feedback for yourself, and on behalf of the whole team here at ThingLink, yeah, we can't thank you enough for all of the work that you've been doing in support of creating a PedTech mindset, and seeing ThingLink at the heart of that has been really exciting for us as well.
We're all sharing the journey together, aren't we? Thank you so much for joining the ride. We're all in it together.
Certainly. And Cheryl, thank you so much for giving us a lens on what you're doing in Leo Academy. And I've been pleased to be part of that journey for some years with yourself as well. And what's coming next? Have you got any ideas about what you're going to be doing next?
I mean, you've just shown us some amazing things. I think every time I speak to you, Louise, I always find out something new. So I'm really excited to be able to share the practice across the trust as well. So yeah, thank you as well.
Amazing. I think that's our time come to the end now. So thank you so much for joining us, everybody. We will send you an email that'll have the links to all the slides, all the links to the resources. I'm just glad my voice has held out. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. And we look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thank you.